Hello and welcome to this week's broadcast of Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm your host, Tony Sweet.
And I'm Eddie Connor.
Well, we are thrilled to have back with us Emmy Award-winning producer and investigative reporter Linda Moulton Howe, and she is going to be on our first 2-hour special.
Ooh, and we can't wait. Now, as you might remember, during our last visit with Linda, she truly had our audience on the edge of their seats when she spoke about cattle mutilations. And now she brings us more of her in-depth research on topics that most people don't speak about during their daily lives, but we certainly do here on Truth Be Told.
You'll also recognize Linda from her informative talks on Coast to Coast AM. Because of her expertise, she is often sought for, such as Ancient Aliens, and also numerous other radio and television outlets from around the world.
Tonight, our fans will effortlessly tour the universe with Linda as she informs the world about events happening right here, right now as we speak. Some of these events are everything from extraterrestrials to other unknown cover-ups that she's always bravely shedding her investigative light upon. Plus, you can gain even more in-depth information and insight by visiting her website at earthfiles.com. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please put your Truth Be Told hands together and welcome back author, producer, and investigator Linda Moulton Howe.
Linda, we're so excited to have you back.
It's great to be back with you guys.
Oh, of course. And it's always an honor because every time that you do a show with us, and afterwards we walk away with knowledge, and all of us are enthused to be more involved in the paranormal world. I mean, because UFOs and it is paranormal. So we're excited to have you here, and we got to catch up. We have so much to catch up on. I think it's been at least 6 months or more. So you've had a lot going on in your life. So can you catch us up a little bit?
Yes, but can we start with an update that everybody should take paranormal out of the dictionary, out of encyclopedias, and out of their use, because it is a word that is loaded with the baggage of ridicule from the past, like the words UFOs.
Right.
And what I can say with great confidence to any audience today, that whether it's animal mutilations or evidence, physical evidence, that there is an alien presence on this planet, that it is indisputable. And when you add on all of the whistleblowers that have talked with me and with others over, for me, the last 36 years, that I've had enough face-to-face with people. One man was dying, and I was able to meet and talk with him. And I will never forget how the tears came in this man's eyes. And he said, Linda, they talk about signing non-disclosure agreements and that you will be sworn if you're in the CIA or DIA for your entire life until you die. You cannot talk about extraterrestrials, back engineering, ET technology, or you will be put in prison. Your family will have no Social Security or pension and all of that. And he looked at me with his eyes filling up with tears. And he said, the truth is, Linda, it is so strange, so difficult, and so disturbing that none of us ever wanted to take home what we were doing to our families. Now, when you get that kind of a sentence from somebody who is passing on, and they have nothing to gain. Mm-hmm. I promised anonymity. No money is exchanged, but they want me to know because, and that's what the whistleblowers that I have encountered in my career, they're frustrated, and a lot are now angry because they feel that it has gone on way too long since World War II, for our government and other governments to have taken a position that it would be only a tiny elite with a need to know in a few governments who would have access to the truth that there is an alien presence on this planet, has been here for millions of years, precedes Homo sapiens sapien, whatever its source. And when I say whatever its source, the implication to me has been that we are on a planet and in a solar system, in a galaxy that other intelligences have been using and harvesting and mining, literally, as one man said, we have proof, for at least 270 million years.
Wow.
That was back before the time of the dinosaurs.
Right.
And when I said that to one of these whistleblowers, well, that's before the time of the dinosaurs, he looked at me and his eyes narrowed and he said, well, one of these groups that we're dealing with made the dinosaurs, and they treat this planet as one big laboratory where genetic mixing and matching of genes is something that they have done. And he said, not only did they make the dinosaurs, but the centaurs, the unicorns, all of the so-called mythological creatures that have been found carved and in ancient texts. He said they all existed. And dragons in the air, he said they all existed. And then he brought my attention to what I think is really a very significant bottom line about what are the agendas and the calculated strategies of very advanced intelligences with this planet, other planets, and throughout the at least the Milky Way galaxy. And he said, 66 million years ago, the hypothesis is that a 6-mile diameter, either a piece of an asteroid or in the meteorite category that would be huge, 6 miles, was headed toward Earth. And he said that is an extinction event. And that what they call the extraterrestrial biological entities, for people who may not be aware, the categories of ETs were introduced to Ronald Reagan in a 1981 briefing at Camp David. They broke them down into 5 types, starting at the top, extraterrestrial biological entity known by the acronym EBEN. That's EBEN. That's what it stands for, extraterrestrial biological entity. And they told Reagan that the next 2 on their list of 5 were made by the EBENs, cloning and hybridization. One of the categories, the archeloid, was defined as, this is in the briefing for Reagan that has been leaked, but it was called rapid cycle cloning. That's right there in the briefing. That the rapid cycle cloning was used by the EBENs, collecting other genes to create archeloids that stand approximately 5'3" to 5'6" inches with huge, big, beaked noses, vertical pupil eyes, skin that appears to have lizard pattern, which places it in a reptilian category, and a head that comes up in a long dome. And where do we hear about that all the time in the modern world? The Paracas skulls down in South America. Well, as far as I know, those Paracas skulls, they are real. That has nothing to do with binding heads, which is what counterintelligence says all the time. Those are real skulls of real non-humans with exaggerated long skulls. And if you go to the British Museum or to the Louvre, or I'm leaving out the Middle East now, where everybody used to go, but it's too difficult. But thank God that France and England had the foresight to bring so much of the Assyrian, Babylonian, Sumerian, I'm going to say, artifacts into the museums in the 100, 200, 300 years ago. If they hadn't, look at what has happened in Syria, the complete and total destruction. And what I'm heading is that these types that the EBENs made are represented from the whistleblower I was talking. We had a very frank discussion. The Anunnaki were an extraterrestrial civilization, and so were the Greeks. And that in the list to Reagan, with the EBENs on top, using rapid cycle cloning to make the archeloids were part of the Mesopotamian overlordship. And then the next one on the list were the quadloids, and they are beings that have four appendages. But they were, according to this briefing that was given by Bill Casey, who was put as head of the CIA by Reagan when he became president. Casey is leading the briefing. If the Ebens took genetic material from reptilian lizards and praying mantis insects, and that hybridization are these quadloids. The fourth, they called Heplaloids.
Heplaloids.
Yeah, the government did not give any definition to Ronald Reagan, at least in the publicly released transcript, which is puzzling. In Latin, Hepla is the number 7, and it may have something to do with, and this is just speculation, 7-foot tall, white skinned, tall whites that may be related to Anunnaki. And why that would have been left out of the transcript, I think, relates to the fact that tall whites do have a habitation on this planet now underground. The fifth, the most interesting on the list in some ways, was Trantaloid, Trantaloid. I can't quite find anything that makes quite the sense as the others of Tranta, but it's defined for Reagan as an insect species 1,000 years in advance of us. And that not only is their technology capable of neutralizing gravity, moving through black holes, crossing space and time without time, that they come from a section of the cosmos in which whatever their planetary system is, it appears to have elements that do not exist, even in our solar system. And that raises a fascinating issue about, we're in a big universe, 13.9 billion light years. There are these, I'm going to call them sort of waves of evolution. Michio Kaku refers to it as possibly, he would say in an intelligence category 1, 2, 3, 4, and that in a 13.9 billion light year universe, that you might have time, if you divide 14 by 4, let's say, or 5, that you would have 4 or 5 epochs in the life of the universe so far for some kind of life to have evolved in epoch 1, 2, 3, and we would be in 3 or 4 now. And that this idea of other intelligences being so advanced that they handle light, suns, gravity, which is what Michio Kaku has talked about in his books now for years, that advanced intelligences would be harvesting energy from suns, that they would already know how to neutralize gravity. They would know how not to have to go through Euclidean geometry, meaning on the Earth, a Euclidean geometry route would be an ant that must go forever close to the ground, or us who must go in cars and even planes in the sky. We're still moving in XYZ axes, and we're still having to go from point A to point B to point Z on a sphere. If you fit the category of what is described in the Ronald Reagan briefing, you have been able to master neutralizing gravity. And then the way it's described to me, came right from a man who had worked at Wright-Patterson and MIT, and he was developing ring lasers, and he told me face to face, he said, we are dealing with intelligences in this universe. If they are here, where my fingers maybe you can see, and this is, let's say this is the Milky Way galaxy, and they're 7 billion light years away in some other part of the universe, and they want to come to Earth. The way he did it, he put his wrists together and he kind of made a 90-degree angle, and he said, All they have to do is bend space and time in
Wow.
touch, point to point. And
Wow.
that,
That's awesome.
yeah, that physicist who also, I mean, I've never revealed a single name of anybody who ever asked for anonymity, but I have tried as credibly as I could to report what they have wanted me to know, and realize I always run that risk. Any reporter who worth their salt who says I have to go background, I have to say anonymous, it weakens our ability to leverage in a credible
I
way
bet.
all of this information. But I started this whole jazz riff with, I have great confidence in what I'm going to say to you, and everything I'm saying I think is absolutely true. And that the idea that we have point to point travel existing in advanced civilizations would explain something else that has always been a mystery. Our planet is a sphere, and we go around a sun, and we have a moon
Mm-hmm.
that goes around our Earth, very specifically placed so that we get total solar eclipses and lunar eclipses, which a lot of people have suggested is not by accident, is not natural, that the Ebens, and this is coming back to that man that I was talking who had a very in-depth discussion as a whistleblower from the DIA after he retired, that the moon is a machine. It was placed there purposefully by the Ebens, is the way I've been told, and that their perspective on our planet Earth is that it is a laboratory. And when you then look back through the ages and at the angst and the anguish of the human condition, and how many brilliant minds in humanity have said, who are we? Why are we here? Why is there such a bell shaped curve of humanity? Very few ever in any 70-year period are there human beings that have no concern about money, survival, health. The vast majority of people on planet Earth are always moving in waves of all kinds of anxiety and disease and things that are considered negative.
Mm-hmm.
Only a tiny percentage, all throughout recorded history, only the tiniest percentage has ever been free of want. So, if this is a laboratory, and I think that's probably a very good word, then the evolution of all of these different primate species, going all the way back to Lucy in Africa, the primate identified in the it's the Olduvai Gorge, and she was found to, I think, on dating, I think the last number that I saw is that she was aged at 1.8 to 1.9 billion years ago, and she is considered the fossil that that paleontologists would say this is where a primate that would live in the trees, swing on branches, went to the ground and stood up.
Hmm.
That's sort of the definition of the Homo erectus. That's what it means. So, how many, let's say, designs? The retired DIA guy said to me, "You can think of human evolution on our planet as you walk into a Sears store and you go to their vacuum cleaner department, and every year there are different models. And it's a question looking back," he said to me, "that there have been a variety." He said, let's say there have been 15 different Hoover vacuum cleaner models that have worked, and we're the 15th.
Hmm.
That's the analogy he gave me after working for 23 years in the Defense Intelligence Agency. And his definition of his work assignment was to monitor and analyze the geopolitical, territorial, conflict of three different extraterrestrial civilizations on this planet. And that discussion that I had was in 1999. We're talking in 2016. And between 1999 December and December 2016, that 7-hour discussion with that man has been reinforced more over and over and over again. And now, as we are in 2016, soon to be in 2017, I think about it so often because we are in revolutionary times on this planet right now. It's happening politically, it's happening in religions, it's happening economically, it's happening in all kinds of things related to race, sex, sexual preferences. All of it is like a churn, like everything is now has been sort of cracked open. And yet, in these revolutionary times of humanity, we still are on a planet in which something long ago succeeded in slamming the door shut on any other intelligent life in the universe, saying to evolving, developing humanity, probably at least consciously to Neanderthalensis, I think they were very smart, that put in kind of a context, a box around social development and even economic development. We are the only life forms in this big universe. And you must go to buildings to pray to a God to protect you, and you must pay tithes to that church in order to continue to be the only life form in the universe on Earth. And there has been kind of a sales pitch through the centuries along those lines. And when I wrote An Alien Harvest, my first book that came out in June of 1989, I remember the night that I sat at a desk trying to finish the epilogue and realized that deep within me was almost the feeling like I already know this and I'm living this. And I remember writing the words that may all of the human family finally be told all of the truth, let the chips fall where they may, so that no Homo sapien will ever again get down on their knees in front of extraterrestrials who come and go on planet Earth and pretend or let humans treat them as gods.
Hey, Linda, can I ask you something? Because what stood out to me that you said that they created dinosaurs kind of as a laboratory experiment. Well, they got rid of the dinosaurs. Is there going to be a point where either we have evolved too much to where they're threatened, or like we're no longer want this species? Let's create a new one. Is that possible?
It's such a good question, and I'll tie it back to where I got off on a branch to the DIA guy who was raising this question. He said 66 million years ago, we know the Ebens had been working this planet genetically and mining and everything, and others, not just the Ebens, but that 270 million mark. And he said, and we know based on what they can do in front of us now, neutralizing gravity, he said, they could have evaporated that 6-mile asteroid. I'm just going to call it an asteroid coming in. Or they could, and get this, they could have moved it into another dimensional frequency or timeline so that it would never have interacted with Earth. He said, what I'm saying to you is 66 million years ago, there were intelligences here who could have stopped the Chicxulub crater impact. If the Ebens were in control, and they're the grays with the heads that are shaped like pears, completely different than the grays that are more the Whitley Strieber kind that come down to the very long pointed chin. The long pointed chin are not necessarily our allies. The ebens with the pear-shaped heads are the ones the government referred to in their documents and briefings as at least allied enough to have helped us. So, given that distinction that we're talking about the pear-shaped grays being the ones that could have moved the asteroid into another timeline, another dimension, or literally have evaporated it, that they would have that kind of molecular or atomic control. So he said, we have always been bothered by what seems to be a contradiction in their ability and what happened. And he said, so we have left open the hypothesis that the Ebens had been mixing and matching genes on this planet from 270 million years ago through the dinosaurs as one of their laboratory projects, all of the dinosaurs, a laboratory project. And in 66 million years ago, it was the Ebens or one of their colleagues or all of them together who decided that they would either provoke this because it's easier to change an entire planetary body by what's called an existential event. Existential is where 95% of the current Earth life is taken out, or maybe 70, but what we're talking about, the Chicxulub crater, it was 70% of marine life, I believe, up to 95% of surface life. So it was a major existential threat. What happened after the nuclear winter, which is the skies would have been filled with darkness from the fires and from everything that happened? All trees and plants, everything on the surface died. Okay. So he said, when you study the evolutionary history of life on this planet, the thing that stands out when you come out of the 66 million year ago extinction event is like a spike, if depending upon the timeline. You know, if you make your timeline long, it looks more hilly. If you make the timeline of what you're doing in a graph more collapsed, you get spikes. And he said the spike that came after the extinction event of the dinosaurs was the rapid rise of mammals. We are mammals. The chimpanzee and the primates in Africa, those are mammals. And so here comes this spike that ends up for the next 66 million years beginning to flourish and dominate. And finally, you get to Lucy as the identified primate that stood up in Africa about 1.8, 1.9 million years ago, and is looked at by paleontologists as the beginning of the standing up primates that kept then evolving in cycles of different sizes, abilities. When you get to Denisovan, that is a major crossroads in the evolution of standing up primates. When you get to Neanderthalensis, the brain capacity of Neanderthal was bigger than all Homo sapiens sapiens today, bigger brain capacity. And we now know they put flowers on the graves of their dead ones. And a new kind of revolutionary thing that is beginning to happen, where the Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien overlap with Neanderthalensis about 40,000 years ago. That's us evolving into modern man, starting in this cross section with Neanderthalensis about 40,000 years ago. The cave drawings at, say, Lascaux, and those beautiful, beautiful caves that go along between the French and Spain and that area of Europe, the south to the north. And there are the caves where they have found horses that are so beautifully sketched on the walls. They could be in the MoMA Modern Art Gallery in New York. And there is now a rethinking that some of the geography of the beautiful cave art that has always been ascribed to Homo sapiens sapien may very well have been a transition that Neanderthalensis was responsible for some of those beautiful drawings. If that's true, larger brain capacity, honored the dead with flowers, could reflect their environment with art. Why was Neanderthalensis replaced evolutionarily on Earth by Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien, that is a violent species educated in tribal warfare? Why did that happen?
I have no idea. I'd love to know.
Yeah. And so how big is the canvas?
Right.
How big is the experiment? And I'm working on an area that I don't know if you guys have had anybody talk about it, but I am fascinated with, for a background having to do with abductees, contactees, scientists, and so forth. And that is the question that was posed at that big New York sort of bring in a huge audience and put some scientists, physicists, and philosophers on the stage. This happened in April of this year of 2016. And Neil deGrasse Tyson was the moderator. The big, huge American History Auditorium for this event, the tickets sold out like that. And when they got everybody on that stage, and it was televised, and I think they sell the videos, you were hearing some of the best minds on the earth trying to deal with this question. Are we in a simulated universe? And the reason that they came together is because of strange things that have been discovered at the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva. People who have been tracking various aspects of the background, microwave, all sorts of things. What happens at the quark level in atoms? Believe it or not, there have been some suggestions. Oh, sorry, I forgot to take that off.
That's okay.
They'll understand. That there is, I think your audience would have heard this word, iteration, ITER, the repeating, let's say in software, in computer software, where there will be iterations in order to accomplish an execution of a command, all being done in zeros and ones. When you find repeating iterations, that is the world of computer software. And there are some scientists saying that repeated iterations at the quark and the atomic level are puzzling to them, suggesting that we are in something like a computer simulation. Well, that alone by itself, the fact that scientists have even thought about this. Now, let's parallel the fact that this is a discussion that sold out in New York with major players today in this year of 2016. And now let's parallel it going back to the early 1990s, the book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. I was at a conference with Bud Hopkins, who at the time in the early 1990s was considered probably the major abductee investigator on the planet. And he and I left this conference in the Midwest, and we're seated next to each other on this airplane. He's going to New York, and I was going, I think, to Denver. And we got to talking about a subject that had been raised, not presented in depth, just raised at the conference where we've been, about the new book by Michael Talbot, The Holographic Universe. And Bud leaned over to me, his voice dropped. He whispered, "He is one of my abduction cases."
Oh,
I said,
wow.
That's huge.
and I don't exactly. And I don't feel that there's anything wrong anymore in saying this because Michael passed not long after his book came out in the 90s. Bud Hopkins passed, I think, 3 years ago or so. So I think they would want this to be known now. And I understand why, when Michael was alive, he didn't want anybody. Uh, People in the 80s to the 90s would have denigrated his important book if it had said by a
Abductee.
man who is in the human abduction syndrome, working with Bud Hopkins, and he's meeting with ETs, and that he's getting telepathic downloads. And this is what Bud said to me. He said, I want you to keep this a secret.
You're like,
Michael doesn't want anybody to know. And Michael Talbot was alive then. And he said, the entire manuscript for the book, he told me, was from telepathic downloads from the extraterrestrials who had been taking him since he was a child.
Wow.
that is just crazy.
Yes.
See, now that he's gone, this feels like a great revelation. It gives me more credibility to me. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And if all of your listeners and you, if everybody will read The Holographic Universe, it will give you a little lift up to be able to start listening to these scientists who are seriously discussing, are we in a simulated universe? Now, so those are 2 tracks. I'm going to add a 3rd track.
Elon Musk's on that too, right?
Say that again.
I think Elon Musk is a big proponent of the simulated. Yep.
The great quote earlier this year from Elon Musk, I love that guy. He is a true pioneer. He said, I don't know exactly where his math comes, but I'm giving you the quote because I've never forgotten it. It's 1 billion to 1 chance that this universe evolved naturally.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Now, we've got scientists. We have Michael Talbot, an abductee. I'm now on, it's going to be on December 20th. I do my 3 hours on Coast to Coast AM on the 20th on Tuesday instead of the Thursday because I'm working before Christmas. And on December 20th, I'm going to have two of my 4 half hours are going to be with one of the most fascinating interviews that I have ever done in my professional life, with somebody who is in the contactee category more than an abductee, meaning the contactee going all the way back to the early 50s, especially in England. There were people who would say that they met a tall blonde. In Europe, it was almost always a tall blonde, not a gray. And they had telepathic images, codes, hieroglyphs put into their mind. And it was very disorienting to people, but they were called contactees because they didn't go on a spaceship. They were not zapped out in their consciousness. They would meet somebody that was usually 6 or 7 feet tall, and they would get information. So in this interview that I'm going to be doing, and I'm talking about it now in our interview because I think that it is so important for people to start moving their minds in these directions. This is a contactee who dealt with blondes, who dealt with little grays, which he said obviously to him were androids. That's a programmed robot, but made out of organic flesh. And that in this huge period of his life, when he was having these extraordinary interactions, that when he got to be an adult male, and I'm not going to say anything more than, he has an event that ends up taking him from his point of view to another dimension. Astounding, astonishing. This is not, he's not a person who overstates. He's not a person who flowers. He's the opposite. He is a calm, understated human being who has had the most extraordinary insight into what? Being shown he thinks it's another dimension because time was completely different. Not by beings, a telepathic voice that was so clear to his human mind where he was, as he said, I was freaked out. I had no idea what happened. I had no idea where I was. As far as I'm concerned, I was a human from Earth. I said, I'm a human from Earth. And the telepathic male voice said, oh, Earth. We know about Earth. You are now in another dimension. And they showed him that they had in a lab a universe that they had to stop its evolution because it escaped their ability to control in the dimension they were in when they were trying to simply put the chemistry and physics and inorganic quantities of things together so that they could learn something about the beginning of their dimensional universe.
Sounds like us.
And when it started to take off, it scared them. They're telling the contactee, and that there was a technological apparatus around this universe they were showing, and he could see scintillating lights in it. And then he began to understand the man was, that's our universe. And then the man said, yes, we made your universe. And in the process of doing it and escape control, we have learned that we are inside another universe. And all of a sudden, the idea of the Russian nesting dolls, that you could be in a universe that's inside of a universe that's inside of a universe through infinity, and how complex is all of this? And if this is true, I can offer this as fascinating insights at the end of the year in a radio broadcast in which I'm not trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to say this is going to be a broadcast about known facts. I'm saying here are these, I've given you the parallels of current physics, Michael Toblett's holographic universe, and this extraordinary contactee who is broadening my own mind in saying, is it possible that this universe encapsulates another universe, and this universe is in another universe, it's in another universe, and could that begin to start pointing us in the direction that dark matter and dark energy and the mysteries of the singularity, how did this universe come into being, and what was its existence before? These are all fundamental to quantum physics today. They are profound and true physics questions. What if nesting universes or parallel universes or clustered universes would begin to point us in the right direction of physics? I think if we were all the whole human family tonight at midnight, no matter what the time zone, we all had this Twitter that led to Facebook, that led however Trump and company wanted to do it. We're not alone in this universe. We apologize for, since World War II, keeping this a secret. Everything is becoming too complex. We're being pushed to Mars because there may be threats on Earth. Elon Musk is going to get our first human frontier posted on Mars because it's absolutely necessary for human survival. See, those are the words I think should be being said to us, not to scare us, not to scare us, but to finally start telling the human family the truth that there are existential threats, as well as there are, Tony, there are allies. They care about us. They have been the avatars of history. Humans may have the most precious souls in this universe. There is a reason for us to survive. But how are we going to survive ourselves if the only priorities on this planet are the Kardashianism of the world, money, sex, clothes, what you look like, when the very thing that is of interest to the non-humans and may be the only e-ticket in the cosmos is our soul. And we're not being taught anything truly about the relationship of the unseen soul to the photons of this universe that may be entangled, and that might be the entanglement of photons might be related to the universe below and above. If we knew the true physics, if we knew reincarnation is real, if we knew that when matter succumbs to entropy, that we're in a universe, entropy is the constant winding down of energy to what we call death. If we all knew, I don't mean mythology or religious text. If we knew for a fact, and it would have to be somehow demonstrated, and maybe that's what Christ and Buddha and Krishna and the avatars of history were trying to do. You humans don't understand what happens at the moment of death, and we are going to show you. If it is something like that, and that where you go, which dimension you go at the moment of death, is linked 100% to the choices that you made to love or hate, to cherish life or kill. Maybe that is what the whole planet is missing. And if that were put back in front of us, this is the real living truth, not Kardashianism. This is the truth. Maybe all of the tribal warfare, the provoked warfare that I think ISIS is provoked by something that is very negative. I'm saying that.
Right. One thing that really popped into my head when you were talking about this is, I can't believe, honestly, we don't have but maybe 10 minutes left, and I'm like, I can't believe how fast this
I feel like
goes.
it's been on for 4 minutes.
I know it. You're always like just amaze me. So, first of all, Matrix comes to mind, the movie itself.
Exactly.
That because when you think
Totally.
about it, how they can bend time and different parallels and stuff, that popped in my head. But second, when you're talking about the, I don't see how humans at all have any bargaining power at the table between aliens or UFOs or extraterrestrials and ourselves. I just don't see how we have any bargaining power. But what popped into my head, and you can correct me maybe if I'm wrong, that they negotiate with our leaders to keep us, the people, down.
Dumb,
So
blind, and ignorant.
Because if otherwise we would revolt. So we need to have those leaders negotiated, our leaders negotiating with them.
But I must say this. Yes, I understand what you're saying. But when I was stressing we have allies, one of the stories that's so important, I'm glad I'm saying this here at the end, that in 1949 is the understanding that I have when this occurred. It was in the Roswell region again, but it was not the July 2 to 5, 1947. This is 2 years later. There's another crash, another retrieval. Military, Project Pounce, Moondust, those guys, by then, they knew. They had orders. There were divisions. There were those who dealt with the dead. There were those that dealt with the alive. They knew exactly where they had to go. Everything was quite organized and orderly. They're at one of these crash sites. I heard this story. I'm telling you, this is the person who talked to me talked directly with the man I'm going to tell you about. So to me, it's firsthand information. There was a captain, Air Force captain, amid the military group that are very efficiently handling this crash site because they've had so much experience. And the way it was explained to me, the Air Force captain is walking on a very specific aspect of the crash scene because everybody else was doing their work. And they had taken out and various parcels to go through, with each one having assignments. And the Air Force captain had an agonizing cry come into his head. And the cry was as if it were a female, not screaming, but crying in pain. It stopped him in his tracks. He was so stunned that as he looked, he's looking at debris, he's looking at rocks, he's looking at dust. He can't, this was so compelling, because when something's inside of your head, how would you have any relationship to where it is?
Mm-hmm.
And then the sound came a second time. And with it, as if whatever was making the sound took a hold of his very soul and his mind and body and made him look. That's the way it was described. Made him look. And now he's staring into eyes. And he realizes, oh my God, we never, and the eyes, the being was under debris. So the being knew they were not seeing it. Well, from that moment, a whole bunch of things were set in motion. By then, in 1949, our government was quite aware that there were humans, not many, they called them translators. They could get telepathic communication from the variety of non-humans that we were already dealing with by then, while 95 or 8% of the human population could not do this. They looked for people like this, and so now they've got an Air Force captain who obviously is in that category, and his order that came from the Department of Defense was, you are to travel with this being to Los Alamos, which was then probably the single most secure facility in the United States, outside of maybe underground at the Capitol and a couple of other places. And that he had the assignment to stay with this being 24/7, 365. And it's my understanding that during that period of time, they brought in kinescope, they brought in film. He would sit down with the being. He would tell, our government has this. It's been described to me how the being and this man sat next to each other, and the captain could tell the Department of Defense, this is what the being is saying about the universe, about physics, about the earth, their relationship, that this being is an engineer, was an engineer on a craft, that he is not a sophisticated physicist, but he knew all kinds of things about our universe that our physicists did not know. And that this compelling translator with an Eben has been recorded, as I understood, at least every day for 1 year out of this period. And that obviously they would then later on, they would have to transfer the film to some kind of video, because film will deteriorate. It could explode in the old days. And so it's probably now on some I hope to God, they have saved this on some sophisticated format. On June 18th, 1953, the being died of unknown causes, and leading up to its death through the Air Force captain. It had communicated and shown him that if they would send a specific signal, like a Morse code, through a generator aimed, and the being gave all this information, that if the Ebens would come with a craft, even at Los Alamos, and put a beam of energy, we'll call it the Eben from the crash site, could be resurrected, literally resurrected. And that our government did everything they could. I believe this. They did everything they could to try to follow the dying being's instructions, trying to send out signals. That is what was the root of Project Sigma that still exists today, communication with extraterrestrials. And that the death of this being with a legacy of all of this firsthand information to that Air Force captain is one of the most single important bodies of direct information. And here's the part. Hang on to this forever. The captain said on the film that he came to love this Eben as if it were his own child.
Wow.
Not because it was a child of mind, but because it was only 4 feet high and he was 6 foot something. But that he loved this being, and that he felt that the being truly loved him. Agape love. Agape love is what all of us should be sharing with each other. Sex should be put over on a back burner everywhere on the planet. Agape love is what we should be doing with each other, cherishing life. And that is what that Air Force captain got to experience with that Eben before the Eben died. We all need to know this. We all need to know there are allies and to not be spooked by boogeymen in the shadows. And so if my work and my life helps everybody get to that point, then it will all have been worthwhile.
Oh my God, Linda, I even hate to say goodbye, but this.
Can you come back tomorrow for 9 hours, please?
Right, yeah, right.
After in the new year, let's do it again in the new year.
Of course.
Lord.
Well, everybody, coast to coast, December, what was it?
20th.
20th.
Yeah, Tuesday, December 20th.
And then tell us about is it Gaia? Are you still? You're going to be?
Yes, my new TV series through Gaia is going to begin in February 2017. We're editing now. It is called Truth Hunter, reported by Linda Moulton Howe, and they asked me for a title, and it sort of just emerged from my lips. And I hope that people understand Truth Hunter really means something to me, that the pressure of fact is what we all deserve, not counterintelligence.
Wow. And I love Linda. I love you, Linda.
I love you guys too.
That was great. Really,
seriously, it's you're one of my favorite guests of all time, just because you're like Truth Be Told, like what we do here. We like to bring the truth to the table and make people think, and you do. My mind, I'm an ADD person, but you kept my attention the whole time you were here. So that says a lot. So thank you so much. And you can go to earthfiles.com and check out all information. I think you constantly do updating on your website of stuff.
Yes.
And,
Earth Files is my center ring.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Linda. We love you, and we'll see you. I know also in Conscious Life. You're going to be at Conscious Life in February.
Yes, in February. Yeah, maybe we can do a radio broadcast face to face.
Oh no, I hope we can. We're going to be there live, so you better come see us.
Let's do it. Let's get it on a schedule.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Linda Moulton Howe, everybody. All right. Bye. Oh my God,
It was really great. So great.
That's one thing about Linda. You don't really have to prepare like questions.
Glad I did.
I know what you did. You had
I
some
know.
great questions, but she's one of those that you can just definitely just let her go, because she has how many years, decades of information, and then other people's information.
She's so
shares.
passionate about that too.
Oh,
It was
love
great.
it.
It was really good.
Well, we want to thank you guys for joining us. Now we have another hour coming up. We have world-renowned astrologer Rachel Lang. We're going to talk about 2017, the Mercury retrograde coming up, and just tons and tons of other things. So prepare yourself. So don't go anywhere. This is Truth Be Told, where we believe in experience becomes truth. I'm Tony Sweet.
Captain Ron.
All right, we're out. Talk to you later. Bye. Hey, thank you for listening to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie right here on Universal Broadcasting Network. Make sure you go to our iTunes page. Just type in Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. Listen to us on iHeartRadio. Again, Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. And go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. So please support our sponsors and make sure you listen to us every Friday right here on Universal Broadcasting Network from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, have a good week.